But I've I've always been nervous about how to handle that sort of stuff because I'm an All right. Cool. VGA. No.
If you're sitting on the outside and there's an empty seat, move towards the center so when people come in, they can sit on the outside. Push it and hold. There's a lot of different options.
I'm waiting on the adapter. No. Well, not here. VGA. VGA to HDMI? Anyone? Or DisplayPort.
Could I? Yeah, I guess possible. PowerPoint. Sorry, I didn't get an announcement or anything that they wanted. I gotta flash up the copy of the PowerPoint.
Hoping that I still have one of those.
I guess I should have asked. Heck, I even have the adapter in my upstairs in my room. I just didn't bring it down.
It might still be faster for you probably.
Is that what you want me to do? Or?
There's not gonna be enough time.
I could just lecture also. Right?
Well, if you want to do that, that might be. Right? Maybe right. That's what you're doing. Worst case scenario, you throw it up on Google, and I'm pretty sure that they'll make slides out of Google Slides. We don't get it like that.
Crap, I'm not on the internet. Not a pineapple. Oh, yeah, they want a passcode too. Or I'll just go blind.
You can go blind. Okay.
Thank you all for coming. This is Off-Grid Comms and Power. And we had a little bit of a technical issue in trying to get the video to work, but I'll post the slides online. They're not really super needed. So more a lecture, and we'll kind of go from there. So first, disclaimer, my opinions are expressly only my own and do not express the views of my employer. Always remember to follow appropriate safety protocols and be sure that you understand what you're doing when working around electricity or RF transmissions, and of course, don't be an idiot. So yeah, my name is Justin. I go by JDog Herman on Twitter, on GitHub, and you can find me on Keybase. I'm a hardware tinkerer. I work as a penetration tester for a local firm in Cleveland, and I'm also a ham operator and run the ham exams that happened yesterday and will happen tomorrow. So if you're interested, if any of this stuff kind of draws your interest and you want to jump kind of feet first into that world, come see me afterward and I can talk to you a little bit more. I'm also an imposter, so I tricked you guys into coming here, so that was great. So shit hits the fan. Who, what, when, where, how, and why? It's really the basic questions to be asked when you're thinking about how am I getting out of this particular problem. Who are you going to be needing to communicate with? You're talking about comms. What is happening around you? What sort of resources do you guys have that you can leverage in order to get back up and online? Where are you at, or what sort of distances are you trying to cover or clear if you're trying to go from one location to another or get connected? When might this happen? Is it happening during the night or in the winter? Why are you having this sort of problem? And of course, how are you going to make it all successful? I know that many of us have carried bug out bags, and I know that I'm no different than that, but I think commonly we forget about how we're going to power all of our devices when we get out there. Once our batteries run dry and our battery pack might go to empty, we're going to be just like the plebeians running around without power. So when we're thinking about electronics we're going to bring when thinking about emergency preparation, we really need to be thinking about where we'll be at and can you take it, and the technical limitations of the other people that you're attempting to communicate with, because it's great if you understand how to communicate, but if no one else can reply back to you or really hear you, then it's all kind of for naught. So the most basic sense, everyone carries this form of communication. It has a lot of ubiquitous opportunities, is obviously your cell phone. It's convenient, it's readily available, but it's heavily dependent upon your network coverage and availability. Oh my God, okay. No, this is the wrong way. Depending on network coverage and availability. I don't know if you guys have ever been in situations where you have had poor cell coverage or high utilization. You can see, be it even just a concert, you're not able to make any sort of data transfer. You may have full bars, but the network's saturated, and you're not going to get any messaging out. Or you'll be reduced down to the slowest possible methodologies. So some of the products that I'm going to mention here and some of the techniques I'm going to talk about involve using alternative methods beyond just relying on the cell service. And the first one is a product called Gotenna Mesh. It happens to be really small and convenient. It's a fairly new product. It leverages the 900 megahertz, and as the name implies, it offers mesh topology up to 6 hops, including the final destination, with end-to-end encryption. And it leverages like I said, 900 megahertz, and links actually to your cell phone, so you can send text back and forth, send GPS coordinates, and doesn't require any sort of subscription service. It has a built-in battery pack, so you kind of get a day's worth of usage, active usage when leveraging it, and it's an easy adoption. You can hand that out to your significant other or your kids, and they would be able to kind of instantly understand they need to open up the app and begin communicating. Gotenna Mesh, Gotenna Mesh. They run about $90 per each. You can buy them in a pack of 2 for $180. That's list price. Don't spend list price. I always carry one to any of the cons that I have, so if you see anyone else, I know there's a few other people here that also carry them. Again, they opportunistically mesh and don't require any calibration or connection with that. Next one, if you're a little bit further away, but you still want to get connected with other people, is a device called the Spot Messenger. It's sort of on the waxing of their product line, but it allows a one-way available messaging. So not only give you a tracking position, so you could hand that out to, you could let someone know that you're going to be heading out and have that particular device. You can send a quick message that you're safe, or be able to send a waypoint of communications. It is subscription-based, and it runs about $150. It also has a battery pack inside, so power for that, and I've seen those run for about 18 hours with active usage. Next is we're talking about voice. There's FRS and MRS communications. Those are the family radio services and the general mobile radio services. They are both really low cost to use, low barrier of entry, easy to hand out. Those are the Motorola's that you might find in a Target store in the clamshell pack, and you pull them on out. A couple things to know about those, though. You can't do any modifications to them based on their license. They are limited to 2 watts of power, and you got preset channels that you can only leverage. The GMRS is a low-cost license. I think it's like $75 for like 5 years, the FCC. But it does grant you the ability to have some peak power up to 50 watts. But again, fixed frequencies, fixed usage, no data over those communications, and no point-to-multipoint ability. There's a new one that's kind of on the scene, and that's called the Othernet or OuterNet. They've kind of been switching names. It is a receive-only methodology. It's fixed reception. It's basically done on global satellites. You can point your dish, low-cost dish, at the particular point, and they are constantly streaming news and education, weather. You can actually send messages out for subscription for other people. You drop it in their Looking Glass web app, and it will send it down to all the recipients. It is a slow process, but if you're at a fixed point, it can work fairly well if you're trying to get, again, the weather, what the stats are in news that might be in the area, and it's covert. Besides having to remain a stationary point, it won't require anyone to know that you're transmitting, that you're still receiving data or information. And then, of course, there's license-based radio. You can go to the FCC and petition them and request and license certain bands to get access. But I don't know if you guys are like me. I don't like to spend a whole lot of money. So that led me to ham radio. There's our HTs, which are the handy-talkies carry around. There's mobile devices, which people sometimes use them on the desk, but a lot of times they'll put them inside their car. And also fixed base, which are much larger units that can live on your desk. A lot of people think that that's just all analog and it's all old school stuff. Nothing's kind of new or come out in the scene, but that's not entirely true. There's actually DMR, which is a digital mode radio. It's kind of nice. There's several different techniques that are out there, including like D-Star and full DMR, and I'm forgetting all the other plethora of different manufacturers' flavors. But you can actually create a project right now called the DMR Hotspot, and uses a Raspberry Pi Zero and allows you to connect that device back into your cell phone if you wanted to, allowing others to jump on and jump back out through cellular service and into other DMR networks by using linked technologies to different repeaters. It is licensed, so all of ham radio you need to be licensed, but the license is really cheap and easily get into. In fact, starting tomorrow, we will have exams, and those are actually all for free. Has wide capability. Lots of people are available to have access to it. But one of the key things is it's non-encrypted. One technology that's commonly used in emergency situations regarding, like say Katrina or the Puerto Rico incidents with the hurricanes, was actually WinLink. It is a ham technology, but it's a worldwide messaging service. Basically, you can send any message along this this network, both wirelessly or through the internet, and it will send small emails, basically, to be received by the pickup node for the recipient. And it's a store and relay type of system. And that was heavily used in sea operations, because you can send that on an HF band and have it available for pickup pretty much worldwide without needing to have an immediate link all the time. Came in the wrong direction.
You let me know like an hour ahead of time or something.
Nobody told me you had just HDMI.
So you only have VGA on that?
I got display port and VGA.
Oh, I know. You have a display port adapter someplace? Yeah, I do have those around. Sorry, continue.
So all these things are going to require power, though. You're looking at a couple nominal voltages, 12 volts being between 11.5 and 13.9. Commonly, the 6-cell lead-acid batteries. You find those a lot in motor vehicles, both motorcycles and cars and whatnot. And then, of course, the ubiquitous 5 volts that you can find in USBs. USB is not just 5 volts, though, so you want to be aware of that. Some of the newer charging methodologies allow for faster charging with 9 or 12 volt. And, of course, line voltage 110 that might be available. Each of your devices that you might want to charge or power using these particular methodologies, it's usually more ideal to maintain at the lower voltages, 12 volt or 5 volt, because a lot of the devices themselves, even if they plug into line voltage, then do reduction and rectification. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to try to invert a lower base voltage up to 120 and then back down into a 5 volts that might be inside the device. So when figuring out which systems you're going to put in place in order to power these devices, it's a good idea to think, okay, what can I do to maybe avoid those losses? USB battery banks, I know that everyone kind of carries them. I did mention about the 5 and 9 and 12 volts. There is limitations for those to be on flights, but usually not a big deal in emergency situations. The battery technologies that are kind of out there, when you're thinking about carrying around a battery, you've got lead acids and lithium ions, lithium polymers, alkalines, of course, NiCad and nickel metal hydroxide. Now, NiCad and nickel metal hydroxide not really out there too much. I know a lot of people forget about utilizing alkaline, but they are quite available and ubiquitous, and they're easily leveraged and stored. They have a great shelf life, but they're obviously not, they are non-reusable. It comes back down to lead acid, which has got a lot of punch and power, but in kind of tried and true, the issue is weight. When you're talking about remaining light and mobile, going from location to location, so you're coming back down to lithium ion and lithium polymer. A lot of people say, well, lithium polymer sounds great. I've used my drones, able to fly them around to use lithium polymer. The problem with those is how temperamental they can be. Overcharge them, the battery pack starts to swell. You store them in a wrong location, battery pack starts to swell. And then you've got a safety concern and how you're going to manage heat and control charging for it. Lithium ions, which include like the 18650 lithium ion phosphates, batteries on lithium ion with iron oxide technology, allows you to a fairly stable package, which is 18 millimeters in diameter and 60 millimeters tall, and are pretty much all laptop batteries. And so when I was beginning my project, I started out just by collecting those. I collected hundreds and hundreds of battery packs. I happened to reach out to a couple small businesses and let them know that I was going to be recycling them, and they were happy to have a place that they didn't have to pay to have them taken away. A lot of people say, well, why would you keep all this around? Get some weird looks from the significant other. But the thing is that in most of these battery packs, only 1 or 2 of the cells have gone bad. And if you've got the tools necessary and you understand the basic safety concerns when pulling them apart and checking them for safety, you can get a lot of great use, a lot more charges and uses out of these particular individual cells. So when you're checking for cells, you're cracking open the battery pack, and you might check the physical cleaning of the cells. You're going to pull off all the goo and whatnot that's there. You're going to be ripping off usually the nickel tabs that are on the edges that are sonically welded to it or spot welded. And you're going to usually start for a starting voltage. If the cell is below 1 volt in a lithium-ion battery, it's usually pretty close to dead, and it should be put aside because it's not really worth your first phase of work. A lot of this is going to be in iterations as you whittle down from a larger set of batteries into a smaller set of cells. So once you've established that it's above a 1 volt, you've got a good candidate for testing. You begin with a controlled charge, usually at like a 1 amp charge rate, until it reaches up to its 4.2, 4.1 max voltage. Now each cell manufacturer has their own unique max voltage to be available. I found that if I use 4.2, I'm usually in a safe environment. You do that through a constant voltage and a constant current, 2 different phases when charging. Once I reach full voltage, I'll do a controlled discharge, usually about a 1 amp discharge rate, because I want to know if the cell can how much it can actually put out. Once it reaches down into about a 2.2 volts, I'll go ahead and stop that discharge, identify how many milliamp hours, write that on the side of the battery, and then I will go ahead and recharge the cell back up to its full voltage. I then take that cell and let it sit. I usually let it sit about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe sometimes a little longer. And I'll come back and I check to see what the voltage is after I've let it sit and wait. A lot of times, bad cells, you may get a good amount of charge out of them the first iteration, but once you let them sit and wait, you'll find that the cell self-discharges fairly quickly, and that means it's built up a lot of internal resistance, which is not something you want to have when deciding to pair it with other cells. After that, you pretty much store them based on the swaths of capacity. So, your 2,000 milliamp hour, 2.5 amp hour, your 1 to 1.5, 1.5 to 2, and you start building piles of those. The next thing you want to think about is what sort of size you're going to want your pack to be, not only in your weight, in your configuration for location, how large you want to store it, and how much voltage you're actually trying to create. When you're looking into some of these things, you'll see 3S or 20P or 3S 80P, or what do those really mean? The S stands for serial and the P stands for parallel. So a 3S 2P has got 6 total cells. 3 of them are going to be, 6 total cells, and 3 of them are going to be in series, 2 of them are going to be parallel. It's going to give you around 12 volts. That's a good utilization. A 4S20P, that would give you a little higher of a voltage range of workability if a lot of your devices don't support working at lower, like 9 and 10 volts. There's also a 3S80P. That's the one that I had chosen to make. I'm going to kick on, go a little faster. Attaching them together, a lot of people will take them and just duct tape them around, but you need to remember that the cells do create a bit of heat, so leaving a little space, you can actually purchase tiny little spacers from AliExpress or Amazon. You can click on them, integrate them together. When you're connecting them together, you could use spot welding technologies or spring terminals. What I chose to use instead was actually soldering them. And I know that some people say, well, hold on, you're overheating this part of the cell. But if you've already abraded a bit of the top of the terminals when you're coming in and you've used flux while you're incorporating the soldering iron, your weld time on that particular terminal is very low, so you're actually not transferring a whole lot of heat to the individual cell body. The reason I chose soldering is, 1, I had it available, and 2, it allowed me to be able to fuse the particular cells together. I used fusible links, which have a fuse rate of 2 amps, so that way any cell that became overly discharged too quickly, that would blow that particular fuse. It's the same technique that's used in some of the Tesla vehicles and their battery packs, even though they leverage different size cells now. You want to think about padding on the cells, when it's, I'll stop there. All right. Well, thank you so much. You can find me at, like I said, keybase.io, Jad Ackerman. You can reach me out at the Ham Talks, and of course, visit the ARL and Aries and Reese's. Thanks.